Hi guys, I'm here today with another page in my Pocket Page notebook, and I want to share a few of my favorite tips for fusing the pockets in these Pocket Page notebooks, because that is one of my favorite things to do with them. I've got this photo today and I didn't trim it, I didn't crop it when I printed it, I just printed it out on a 6x4, so I'm just roughly trimming it now to fit in my pocket where I want it, so just eyeballing it mostly. Now, my first tip with fusing things into these pockets is you do need to work on both sides of the pocket. You'll see what I mean in just a second. I got interrupted by a phone call, but now I'm back. So what I'm doing is I'm trimming down just a piece of white card the same size as the photo that I'm going to use, and that is where I'm going to do my journaling. So I just ran that through my typewriter, however my typing was a little bit uneven. It all was sort of towards the top, so I'm going to fill up that big space I've got at the bottom with a stamp or two from the View From Here stamp set from Brandy Kincaid and Feed Your Craft. This is an very old stamp set, I think, so it's no longer available. Unfortunately, it is one of my favorites. Adding one stamp to my photo, and then I'm going to add the second stamp into that space on my journaling. So that's another thing with fusing anything into your pockets, is they're not going to be accessible, so you want to make sure that you're happy with them before you pop them into the pocket. Now I'm going to fuse things, but just so they don't slide around in there, I am just going to add a little bit of glue these two pieces back to back, and then just trim off any sort of excess. I had, of course, trimmed the paper to the right size, but I never can glue these things all down straight, so I'm just trimming a few little pieces off. And now I can get on to fusing my pocket. So I'm going to fuse a few different things into my pocket this time, and one of the things that I wanted to fuse in here was a piece of vellum that I'm going to run through my Cuttlebug machine with an embossing folder, and it just makes the most beautiful embossed vellum. It did, however, make it super delicate as well, so I ended up ripping it when I tried to trim it with my paper trimmer, so instead I'm just going to have to give it my best go with my scissors, which worked much easier for cutting, but of course I couldn't really make sure anything was totally straight, so I'm trying my best to line it up against my photo there so I can try and trim a straight piece here. Wasn't totally successful, but it's close enough. So that's going to be the first thing I slip into my pocket. Now, I always struggle because my hands don't fit in these pockets, so I use whatever's handy to push it down to the bottom. Just make sure it's right against the bottom, and then I'm going to fuse across the top of it. So when you are fusing these pockets, the first thing to do is to make sure that you heat up your fuse tool nice and hot. I leave mine for probably 10 or 15 minutes before I try and use it, and then I can try fusing these pockets. The other thing I do is slip a piece of heavy cardboard underneath the pocket. No cutting mat or anything like that. It will make sure that I don't leave dents or holes or anything in the paper behind the pocket. So I just slip it in, push it as flat as I possibly can, and then fuse across it. Sometimes it's not going to be that successful depending on how bulky your book is, so you might have to play around with folding a few pages back or lifting some up at a sort of right angle to try and get it as flat as possible. Now the next layer in my pocket is sequins, of course, because why not? These are the Daily D blend from the Stamp Spot, which are, of course, my favorite. So I've put what I thought was a stingy amount of sequins in there, but as soon as I pulled it out, I realized it is a very full pocket of sequins. And then I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm just pushing the sequins all the way down to the bottom of the pocket, and then I just flipped it around so I could see where the sequins were before I used the same cardboard and my fuse tool to fuse a little line across there. Now if you've heated your fuse tool up nice and hot, you should only need to run it across it once. I tend to press quite hard and roll quite quickly is what works for me. If you hold it in one place too long, you're going to melt a big hole in the pocket. So try not to hold it in one place for too long. But I do find that you need to use a reasonable amount of pressure. Either that, or you can press lightly and do it on both sides. I find can work quite well as well. So you'll see I've added my pocket and then fused a line, and then I've added another piece of my embossed vellum and then fused the top of the pocket shut. So now I have my little fused photo vellum shaker pocket in my pocket page notebook, and I really couldn't love it anymore. Now this page spread in my pocket page notebook is a little bit awkward because both paper sides of it have stamps showing through, or I think there's mist on that side. So I am going to need to cover up both sides. I went through my scrap drawer and I found this paper which I thought was going to match nicely, but I decided it didn't. So I went back into my actual paper drawer and found this paper that I like much better. So then I'm just going to trim that down. Again, I really need to get myself a 12 by 12 paper trimmer, don't I? The scissors work fine for me. I'm just using the original scrap piece which fit nicely to trim out this piece here. And then I can go about awkwardly sticking it down. My tape runner actually broke, which I couldn't have been more furious about, to be honest. I hate those tape runners at the best of times, but couldn't have been more inconvenient to break now. So I've gone back to using double-sided tape, and I'm just making sure that I stick it down towards the center first. Then add a few more pieces of tape and stick the whole thing down. Then I can flip it over and just trim off any excess. That way you don't have to worry about measuring anything, just stick and cut seems to work for me. Now because I want to cover up the left-hand page as well, I decided to do a stamped piece on the left-hand side. And I grabbed these really huge alphas from Studio Calico. I really like the style of alpha. I love that sans serif font, and I just wanted to stamp something out with a peachy coloured ink to tie the whole page together. Now I end up with a few issues with this piece because I didn't try to space anything, and because the alpha stamps are so big, I'm never going to be able to fit a whole word across here, and I thought that would be okay. I was just going to not have any spaces or anything and just run the words together, which sort of worked okay. It made it really more difficult to read than I had hoped it would be. Plus, by the time I get to the end of it, I haven't really spaced it very well. All I was going to stamp was truly stunning, and then I ended up with this spare G at the bottom, which I thought looked terrible. So I added sight to the bottom as well, which filled it in, except the gap at the bottom compared to the top was too much, and I really didn't like it. And you know me, I'll usually persist with things as much as I can, but what I decided to do was, rather than use this, I decided I would try again. And you'll see the end of the results here. I didn't film all this stamping. In the end, I decided I would stamp it and see if it worked before I started filming, so it avoids you having to watch me re-stamp everything all again as well. And so this time I used the Grant Street Alpha from Kelly Stamps, which is one of my favorites for traveler's notebooks, a much more appropriate size, I'm sure you'll agree, which meant that I could put entire words across the width of the page, which I think looks much better. It's much easier to read as well. So I had stamped out more than I had originally planned to, just to make a bit more of a feature of it. Then I just needed to trim that piece down a tiny little bit, and then I can go ahead and add some double-sided tape, which again I struggled madly with, and then stick that onto the left side of the page. Now this time I'm sticking it to the left and working towards the center because I haven't trimmed it very well, so I'd rather the gap be in the middle than on the left hand side. Then I can peel off the backing from the rest of my piece, stick that down, and that is this page finally all finished. Now you could completely add more photos on the back on the pattern paper side, but I love it just as it is. I hope I've answered any questions you've got about fusing these pocket page notebooks, but if not, let me know in the comments below and I'll try my best to help you out. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you want to keep watching, there's a couple more videos on screen. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Bye!